The afternoon sun streamed through the tall windows of First National Bank as Andre Washington wheeled himself through the heavy glass doors. The cool air inside was a welcome relief from the summer heat that had beaded sweat on his forehead during the 3-block journey. From his law office, Andre adjusted his navy blue tie and straightened the jacket of his tailored suit. Even after 15 years of navigating the world from his wheelchair following a military accident, he still took pride in his appearance, especially on work days. The small branch was busier than usual for a Tuesday, with about a dozen people standing in line, their faces showing the mild impatience that comes with waiting for financial transactions. "Just need to deposit this check and I'll be back at the office in 20. Andre texted his assistant. He tucked his phone into his jacket pocket and wheeled himself to join the line, nodding politely to an elderly woman who stepped aside to make room. The bank had been Andre's financial institution for nearly 2 decades. He'd opened his first account here when he was just starting law school, long before the injury that changed his life. Now, as a successful attorney specializing in civil rights cases, he maintained both personal and business accounts with substantial balances. The staff usually recognized him, and he'd built a rapport with most of the regular tellers over the years. As Andre waited, he noticed a face he didn't recognize behind the counter. A thin woman with pinched features and blonde hair pulled back so tightly it seemed to stretch her skin. Her name tag read Karen, and unlike the other tellers who smiled as they helped customers, her expression remained fixed in what looked like permanent disapproval. The line moved steadily. A young couple completed their mortgage application consultation and left beaming. An older man in overalls cashed a check and tucked the bills carefully into his wallet. A college student deposited her part-time job earnings. Each transaction took just a few minutes, and soon Andre was fourth in line. Then third, he pulled out the check he needed to deposit. Payment from a grateful client whose disability discrimination case had been settled favorably the previous week. It wasn't his biggest win, but it was one that gave him particular satisfaction. The client, a teacher with multiple sclerosis, had been unfairly pushed out of her job despite excellent performance reviews. The settlement would help her until she found a new position. "Next customer, please," called one of the tellers Andre recognized, a friendly middle-aged man named Ray who had helped Andre numerous times before. The woman directly in front of Andre moved toward Ray's window, leaving Andre at the front of the line. He looked expectantly toward Karen, whose window had just become available as her previous customer walked away. Karen's eyes swept over the line. She looked directly at Andre, then passed him to the person standing behind him. "Next, please," she called, gesturing to the man behind Andre. "Excuse me," Andre said politely, raising his hand slightly. "I believe I'm next in line." Karen's lips tightened. "Oh, I didn't see you there," she said, though she had clearly looked right at him moments before. The man behind Andre spoke up. "He was definitely ahead of me," he said, pointing to Andre. Karen's cheeks flushed slightly, but she waved Andre forward with obvious reluctance. "Fine. Window 3. Andre wheeled himself to her station, offering a smile despite her cold reception. He'd encountered enough prejudice in his life to recognize it, but he also knew better than to immediately assume the worst of people. Perhaps she was having a bad day. "Good afternoon," he said pleasantly, placing his ID and the check on the counter. "I'd like to deposit this to my business account, please." Karen picked up his ID between her thumb and forefinger, holding it as if it might contaminate her. She glanced at the photo, then at Andre, her eyes lingering on his wheelchair before returning to his face with a look of suspicion. "This doesn't really look like you," she said, though the ID had been renewed just 6 months earlier and was clearly Andre's face. "I assure you it's me," Andre replied calmly. "I've been banking here for almost 20 years. Karen made a small noise that might have been disbelief. She turned to her computer and typed in his information with sharp, aggressive keystrokes. "Your account number?" she asked, despite the fact that it was printed on the deposit slip Andre had filled out and placed alongside his check. "It's on the deposit slip," Andre pointed out. "I need you to say it," Karen insisted. Andre recited his account number, maintaining his composure, though he could feel a familiar tension building at the base of his neck, the tension that always came when he encountered someone determined to make his life difficult for no reason other than the color of his skin or his disability. As Karen processed the deposit, Andre noticed Ray at the next window glancing over with a frown. Ray had clearly noticed the interaction, and his expression showed concern. "This is a large check," Karen remarked, though it wasn't particularly large for Andre's business account. "It's a settlement payment for a client," Andre explained, though he wasn't obligated to justify his deposits. "We have to be careful about fraud," Karen said pointedly. "Especially these days. Some people think they can just walk in here with fake checks and we won't notice." Andre raised an eyebrow at her choice of words. "Walk in, but let it pass." "I understand security concerns," he said. "But as I mentioned, I've been a customer here for nearly 2 decades. Karen continued typing, her lips pressed in a thin line. "Well, I don't recognize you. And we get all sorts of people trying to pull fast ones. How do I know you didn't just find this ID somewhere?" The comment hung in the air, its implication clear to everyone within earshot. An older woman in line behind Andre gasped quietly. Ray at the next window stopped what he was doing, his hands hovering over his keyboard. The bank had suddenly grown quieter, as if everyone was holding their breath. A security guard near the door shifted his position, watching the interaction with interest. Andre took a deep breath. In his years as a civil rights attorney, he'd learned that reacting with anger, no matter how justified, rarely led to the best outcome. Instead, he straightened his shoulders and looked Karen directly in the eyes. "I understand you have security protocols," he said, his voice calm but carrying through the now hushed bank lobby. "Perhaps it would help if you called over your manager? I'm sure they could verify my identity, or you could check my account history, which shows regular deposits from my law firm for the past 12 years. Or you could ask Ray at the next window, who's helped me dozens of times." At the mention of his name, Ray nodded firmly. "He's a regular, Karen. One of our best customers." Karen's face flushed deeper, but her expression remained defiant. "I'm just doing my job. We can't be too careful with certain types." A few people in line exchanged uncomfortable glances. The security guard took a step forward, his expression uncertain as if trying to decide if he needed to intervene. Andre remained steady, his eyes never leaving Karen's face. "What exactly do you mean by certain types?" he asked, his voice still measured but with an unmistakable edge of authority that made several people in the bank turn to watch. For the first time, Karen seemed to falter, perhaps realizing she had crossed a line that could not be easily uncrossed. She looked around and noticed the attention their interaction had drawn. Her supervisor had emerged from the office at the back of the bank and was watching with concern. "Nothing," Karen muttered, turning back to her computer. "I just meant new customers." "But I'm not a new customer," Andre reminded her. "As I've stated several times, I've been banking here for nearly 20 years. Karen said nothing as she finished processing the deposit. When she finished, she pushed the receipt across the counter without meeting Andre's eyes. "Is there anything else?" she asked, her voice now flat. Andre took the receipt and carefully placed it in his wallet. "Yes," he said, taking out a small notebook from his jacket pocket. "There is one more thing I need." Karen's eyes narrowed suspiciously as Andre clicked his pen, his face now serious in a way that made her shift uncomfortably in her seat. The bank lobby remained unusually quiet, the atmosphere charged with tension as everyone watched to see what would happen next. "I'll need your full name and employee ID number," Andre said calmly, pen poised above his notebook. Karen blinked, clearly not expecting this request. "Why would you need that?" she asked, her voice rising slightly. "For my records," Andre replied evenly. "It's a simple request." Karen glanced toward the office where her supervisor stood watching. The supervisor, a middle-aged woman with short gray hair and a navy blazer, gave a small nod. "Karen Winters," she said reluctantly. "Employee number 45873. Andre wrote the information carefully in his notebook. "Thank you, Ms. Winters. Now I'd like to speak with your branch manager." "Please, the manager is busy right now," Karen replied quickly, a hint of nervousness creeping into her voice. "I'm happy to wait," Andre said, closing his notebook and tucking it into his jacket pocket. His calm demeanor seemed to unsettle Karen more than if he had shown anger. The supervisor who had been watching stepped forward. "I'm Linda Powell, the assistant manager. Can I help you with something, sir?" Andre turned his wheelchair slightly to face her. "Yes, Ms. Powell. I'd like to discuss the treatment I just received from Ms. Winters here. I believe it would be best to speak with the branch manager directly." Linda's eyes darted between Andre and Karen. Mr. Crawford is in a meeting, but I can assure you we take customer concerns very seriously. Perhaps we could speak in my office? I appreciate the offer, Andre said. But given the nature of what just occurred, I think it's appropriate to involve Mr. Crawford directly. A few customers in line shifted uncomfortably. Some looked embarrassed, others curious. Ray at the next window continued to serve customers, but his eyes kept drifting to Andre's situation. Karen's face had gone from flushed to pale. I was just following security protocols, she insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. Andre didn't respond to her directly. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. With a few taps, he opened a recording app and set it on the counter. Since Ms. Winters seems concerned about security, Andre said to Linda, I'd like to formally document what happened here. Ohio is a one-party consent state for recording, so I've been legally recording our interaction. I'd prefer to discuss this with Mr. Crawford while the details are fresh. Karen's eyes widened at the mention of the recording. Linda's professional composure faltered for just a moment. I'll get Mr. Crawford right away, Linda said, her tone shifting to one of greater urgency. Karen, please close your window for now. As Linda walked briskly toward the back offices, Karen stared at Andre with a mixture of disbelief and growing alarm. You were recording me? She hissed. You can't do that. Actually, I can, Andre replied. And I think it's fortunate that I did. Karen hurriedly closed her window and stepped away from the counter. The security guard, who had been watching the situation unfold, approached Andre. Sir, is everything okay? He asked, his tone professional but concerned. Andre nodded. Yes, thank you. I'm just waiting to speak with Mr. Crawford. The guard, whose nameplate read, Officer Wilson, glanced at the phone still recording on the counter. I saw what happened, he said quietly. Been working here 3 years and that wasn't right. Andre appreciated the support but maintained his composure. Thank you, Officer Wilson. I'd be grateful if you'd be willing to share your observations with Mr. Crawford as well. Officer Wilson nodded. No problem at all, sir. A minute later, a tall man with silver-streaked hair and a well-tailored suit emerged from the back office, following Linda. His face was set in a concerned expression as he approached Andre. Mr. Washington, I'm Robert Crawford, the branch manager, he said, extending his hand. Linda tells me there's been an issue. Would you prefer to discuss this in my office? Andre shook his hand. Yes, that would be appropriate, Mr. Crawford, thank you. Crawford looked at the recording phone on the counter. May I ask what that's for? Documentation, Andre replied simply. I'm an attorney, Mr. Crawford. Old habits. Understanding flickered across Crawford's face, along with something that might have been worry. Of course. My office is this way. As Andre followed Crawford, he could feel the eyes of everyone in the bank on him. Karen had disappeared into the back area, and whispers rippled through the remaining customers. Officer Wilson stood near the counter, watching as Andre wheeled himself toward the manager's office. Crawford's office was spacious and immaculately kept, with awards and certificates lining one wall. He moved a chair aside to make room for Andre's wheelchair, then sat behind his desk. Now, Mr. Washington, please tell me what happened, Crawford said, his fingers steepled in front of him. Andre recounted the interaction in precise detail. Karen's initial attempt to skip him in line, her questioning of his ID, her comments about fraud and certain types, and her overall dismissive attitude. As he spoke, he kept his tone factual rather than accusatory. Crawford's expression grew increasingly troubled. This is deeply concerning, Mr. Washington. First, let me apologize for the way you were treated. It's completely unacceptable. I appreciate that, Andre said, but I want to be clear about something. This isn't simply about poor customer service. What happened out there crosses several lines, both ethical and legal. Crawford shifted in his seat. I understand you're upset. This isn't about being upset, Andre interrupted, his voice still calm but firm. This is about discrimination. Ms. Winters' behavior and comments clearly targeted me based on my race and disability. Crawford's face paled slightly. That's a serious allegation, Mr. Washington. It is, Andre agreed, and one I don't make lightly. He placed his phone on the desk between them. That's why I have the interaction recorded. Additionally, Officer Wilson witnessed the exchange, as did Ray and several customers. Crawford glanced at the phone, then back at Andre. May I ask, what is it you're looking for here, Mr. Washington? Andre leaned forward slightly. What I'm looking for is accountability, Mr. Crawford. I've banked here for nearly 20 years. I've referred colleagues and clients to this branch. I've maintained substantial balances. And yet today I was treated as if I was somehow suspicious or untrustworthy, solely because of who I am. He paused to let his words sink in. I could pursue this legally, as both a civil rights violation and a violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. I think we both know I would have a strong case. Crawford swallowed hard. Mr. Washington, I assure you that kind of behavior isn't what we stand for as an institution. Then prove it, Andre said simply. Actions speak louder than words, Mr. Crawford. There was a moment of silence as Crawford seemed to consider his options. What would you like us to do? He finally asked. First, I want a formal investigation into this incident, Andre said. Second, I want to know what actions will be taken regarding Ms. Winters. Third, I want to see what steps this branch will take to ensure nothing like this happens to anyone else. Crawford nodded slowly. That seems reasonable. The investigation can begin immediately. As for Ms. Winters, there will certainly be consequences, though I can't discuss specific personnel actions. I understand, Andre said. But I want to be clear, this isn't just about one person. If this is happening in your branch, it suggests a larger problem. Perhaps with training, perhaps with culture. Crawford looked uncomfortable but nodded again. You're right. We can and should do better. I'd like to see a concrete plan, Andre continued. As a longtime customer, I deserve that much. And as someone who specializes in civil rights law, I can tell you that addressing this proactively now is far better than waiting for a formal complaint or lawsuit. The implication hung in the air between them. Crawford seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. Will you give us some time to respond appropriately? Crawford asked. I want to handle this right. Andre considered this. I can give you 48 hours to begin the investigation and provide me with an initial response. After that, I'll decide on next steps. Crawford extended his hand across the desk. Thank you for bringing this to my attention directly, Mr. Washington. I promise you it will be addressed. Andre shook his hand firmly. I believe in giving people and institutions the chance to correct their mistakes. Mr. Crawford, that's why I'm here in your office instead of calling my colleagues to file a formal complaint. As they stood to conclude the meeting, Crawford asked, May I ask one more question? Mr. Washington? Andre nodded. You mentioned you're an attorney specializing in civil rights law. What firm are you with? A slight smile crossed Andre's face. Washington, Patel and Associates. We handle discrimination cases primarily, with a focus on workplace and banking discrimination. Recognition dawned in Crawford's eyes. Andre's firm was well known in the region for winning substantial settlements in high-profile discrimination cases. I see, Crawford said, his voice slightly hoarse. I'll expect your call within 48 hours, Andre said as he turned his wheelchair toward the door. Thank you for your time, Mr. Crawford. As Andre wheeled himself out of the office and back through the main lobby, the atmosphere had changed noticeably. Customers watched him with curious expressions. Ray gave him a subtle nod of respect. Officer Wilson stood straighter as Andre passed. Outside in the warm afternoon sun, Andre paused to take a deep breath. Fighting these battles was exhausting but necessary. He pulled out his phone and opened his messages. Might be a bit later than I thought, he texted his assistant. Something came up at the bank that needed attention. As he put his phone away and began wheeling toward his office, he couldn't help but wonder how many others had faced similar treatment, but lacked the knowledge or resources to stand up for themselves. That thought, more than any personal offense, strengthened his resolve to see this through to the end. Andre arrived at his law office 20 minutes later than planned, the encounter at the bank still fresh in his mind. His office was on the ground floor of a renovated brick building downtown, with wide doorways and accessible facilities he'd helped design when the firm expanded 3 years ago. His assistant, Tina, looked up from her desk as he entered. Everything okay? You're not usually late. Had an interesting situation at the bank, Andre replied, wheeling past her desk. Got discriminated against by a teller. Ended up speaking with the branch manager. Tina's eyebrows shot up. You're kidding. At First National. You've been going there forever. New teller, Andre explained, hanging his jacket on the coat rack. Decided it was a good day to profile the guy in the wheelchair. Oh boy, Tina said, shaking her head. Poor woman had no idea who she was messing with. Andre smiled slightly. She'll find out soon enough. I gave the manager 48 hours to start an investigation and get back to me. Want me to block some time on your calendar for this? Tina asked, already pulling up his schedule on her computer. Maybe an hour tomorrow afternoon and another hour the day after, Andre replied. I have a feeling they're going to take this seriously once they look into who I am. Tina nodded. Consider it done. And your 2:30 is waiting in the conference room. The Johnson case. Andre thanked her and wheeled himself into his office to grab the Johnson file. Despite the unpleasant encounter at the bank, he felt a familiar sense of purpose. This was exactly why he'd become a civil rights attorney in the first place, to fight the battles that needed fighting. The rest of the day passed in a blur of client meetings, phone calls, and document reviews. It wasn't until he was preparing to leave for the day that his cell phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Andre Washington speaking, he answered, tucking the phone between his ear and shoulder as he gathered his things. Mr. Washington, this is Robert Crawford from First National Bank, came the reply. I hope I'm not calling too late. Andre checked his watch just after 5:30 p.m. Not at all, Mr. Crawford. I'm surprised to hear from you so soon. There was a brief pause on the line. After our conversation, I felt this matter required immediate attention. Would you have time to meet again tomorrow? I've taken some initial steps and would like to discuss them with you. I appreciate the prompt response, Andre said. I can come by around 2 p.m. tomorrow if that works for you. That would be perfect, Crawford replied, sounding relieved. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to address this properly. After they hung up, Andre sat thoughtfully for a moment. Crawford's quick response suggested he was taking the situation seriously, more seriously than Andre had initially expected. Perhaps the bank manager had done some research into Andre's professional background, or maybe he was genuinely committed to addressing discrimination at his branch. Either way, it was a promising sign. The next day, Andre arrived at the bank at exactly 2 p.m. The atmosphere seemed different from the day before. The tellers glanced at him with what looked like a mixture of respect and curiosity as he entered. Officer Wilson, the security guard who had witnessed the incident, gave him a subtle nod. Linda Powell, the assistant manager, approached him immediately. Mr. Washington, thank you for coming. Mr. Crawford is ready for you in his office. As Andre followed her through the bank, he noticed Karen's window was empty. In fact, there was no sign of the teller who had caused the problem the previous day. Crawford stood as Andre entered the office, extending his hand. Thank you for coming, Mr. Washington. Please make yourself comfortable. Once they were both seated, Crawford placed a folder on the desk between them. I want to start by apologizing again for what happened yesterday. After our conversation, I initiated an immediate investigation, which included reviewing security footage, interviewing staff members who witnessed the interaction, and examining Ms. Winter's customer service history. Andre nodded but remained silent, waiting to hear what actions had been taken. The findings were troubling. Crawford continued, opening the folder. The security footage confirmed everything you described. Furthermore, interviews with staff revealed that this wasn't an isolated incident. Several employees reported witnessing similar behavior from Ms. Winters toward other customers of color, though none as blatant as her treatment of you. Crawford's face showed genuine concern. What's particularly disturbing is that these incidents weren't reported up the chain of command. When I asked why, the responses suggested a culture of looking the other way that I wasn't aware of. That's unfortunately common, Andre commented. People often don't want to rock the boat even when they witness something wrong. Exactly, Crawford agreed. And that's on me as a manager. I've clearly failed to create an environment where staff feel comfortable reporting these issues. He straightened in his chair. As for Ms. Winters, she's been terminated effective immediately. Her behavior violated multiple bank policies regarding customer treatment, professional conduct, and our anti-discrimination guidelines. Andre raised an eyebrow, surprised by the swift action. That was quick. The evidence was clear, Crawford replied. And once I researched your firm and understood the kind of cases you handle, I realized we needed to address this decisively. But firing one employee doesn't solve the underlying issues. He pulled several documents from the folder. I've developed an action plan that I'd like to share with you. First, we're implementing mandatory diversity and inclusion training for all staff, starting next week. Second, we're establishing clear reporting procedures for discrimination concerns, with direct escalation paths to management. Third, we're conducting an audit of customer complaints over the past year to identify any patterns we might have missed. Andre leaned forward, genuinely impressed by the comprehensive approach. That's more thorough than I expected, Mr. Crawford. Please call me Robert, Crawford said. And there's one more thing. He slid a business card across the desk. This is Diane Chen, our Regional Director of Compliance. After reviewing this incident, I took the liberty of discussing it with her. She'd like to speak with you about potentially serving as a consultant for our diversity initiatives bank-wide. Andre picked up the card, surprised by this development. That's an interesting proposition. Your background makes you uniquely qualified, Crawford explained. You understand both the legal implications of discrimination and the personal impact. The bank could benefit from your expertise. Andre tucked the card into his pocket. I'll consider it. But first, I want to make sure the local issues are being properly addressed. Of course, Crawford agreed. Which brings me to another point. We'd like to offer you a formal apology in writing along with assurances about the steps we're taking. Would that be satisfactory? Andre nodded. That would be appropriate. And I'd like to be kept informed about the implementation of your action plan over the next few months. Absolutely, Crawford said. Transparency is essential in rebuilding trust. As their meeting concluded, Crawford asked, May I ask you something a bit more personal, Mr. Washington? Andre gestured for him to continue. You could have easily taken this incident straight to a lawsuit, one your firm would likely win. Why give us the chance to address it internally first? Andre considered the question carefully. I believe in justice, Mr. Crawford, not punishment for its own sake. When possible, I prefer to give people and institutions the opportunity to recognize their mistakes and make meaningful changes. Litigation is sometimes necessary, but it's rarely the best first step. He adjusted his position in his wheelchair. Besides, my goal isn't just to win cases, it's to create environments where these cases don't need to happen in the first place. If First National Bank becomes a model for inclusive banking practices because of this incident, that's a better outcome than a settlement check. Crawford nodded thoughtfully. I appreciate that perspective, and I promise we won't waste the opportunity. As Andre left the bank, Ray, the teller who had witnessed the original incident, approached him discreetly near the door. Sir, I just wanted to say thank you, Ray said quietly. Things have been difficult here sometimes. Many of us have seen problems but didn't know how to speak up. This feels like a turning point. Andre shook the man's hand. Change rarely happens without someone pushing for it. Remember that next time you witness something that doesn't seem right. Back at his office, Andre shared the developments with Tina, who whistled in appreciation. Fired her already? And they want you as a consultant? That's what I call damage control. It's more than that, Andre replied. Crawford seems genuinely committed to making changes. And if they're serious about the consulting offer, it could be an opportunity to create real impact within the banking system. So no lawsuit? Tina asked, sounding almost disappointed. Andre shook his head. Not if they follow through on their commitments. I'll be monitoring the situation, of course. Of course you will, Tina said with a knowing smile. You never could pass up a chance to fix a broken system. That evening, as Andre reviewed case files at home, his phone chimed with an email notification. It was from a senior vice president at First National Bank's headquarters. A formal apology for the incident and an invitation to meet the following week to discuss the consulting opportunity in detail. He set his phone down, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and cautious optimism. One uncomfortable encounter at a bank was transforming into an opportunity for institutional change. It wasn't the first time Andre had turned discrimination into a catalyst for progress, but each victory still felt significant. His phone chimed again, this time a text from his mother. Still coming for dinner Sunday? She asked. Wouldn't miss it, he replied. And I have an interesting story to tell you. Can't wait to hear it, she texted back. Proud of you always. Andre smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new cases, and new battles to fight. But tonight he could appreciate that sometimes standing up for yourself meant creating ripples that extended far beyond one moment or one person. Sometimes those ripples became waves that changed the landscape entirely. 1 week after the incident, At First National Bank, Andre found himself in an unexpected setting. The bank's regional headquarters, a gleaming glass tower in the downtown business district. The security guard at the entrance checked his ID, then directed him to the executive elevators. 32nd floor, sir, the guard said with a respectful nod. Ms. Chen is expecting you. As the elevator climbed, Andre adjusted his tie and reviewed his mental notes. What had started as a simple trip to deposit a check had snowballed into something much larger. The consulting opportunity was intriguing, but he wanted to ensure it would lead to meaningful change, not just serve as a PR band-aid for the bank. The elevator doors opened to reveal a reception area with panoramic views of the city. A woman in a charcoal suit approached as soon as she spotted him. Mr. Washington, I'm Diane Chen, Regional Director of Compliance. Her handshake was firm and her smile genuine. Thank you for coming. The meeting room is this way. Andre followed her down a hallway lined with framed photographs of bank branches throughout the region. I appreciate the invitation, Ms. Chen, though I must admit it wasn't what I expected when I went to deposit a check last week. Chen's expression turned serious. What happened to you should never have occurred in any of our branches. When Robert Crawford called me about the incident, I knew we needed to address it at a higher level. She opened a door to reveal a medium-sized conference room where 4 people were already seated. Andre recognized Crawford immediately. The others, 2 women and 1 man, were unfamiliar. Let me introduce everyone, Chen said, as Andre wheeled himself to an open space at the table. You know Robert Crawford, our branch manager. This is Thomas Green, our VP of Operations, Patricia Alvarez, Head of Human Resources, and Lisa Wong, our Chief Diversity Officer. Andre greeted each person, noting the senior positions they held. This wasn't a performative meeting with low-level employees. The bank was bringing decision-makers to the table. Before we begin, Chen continued, taking her seat, I want to formally apologize again for your experience at our branch. It was unacceptable, and we're committed to ensuring nothing similar happens in the future. Andre acknowledged the apology with a nod. I appreciate that. What I'm more interested in now is understanding what concrete steps you're planning to take. Thomas Green, a man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair, leaned forward. That's exactly why we wanted to meet with you, Mr. Washington. We've been reviewing our policies and practices since the incident, and we've identified several areas where we need improvement. Patricia Alvarez, a woman with warm brown eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, added, The termination of the employee involved was just the beginning. We're implementing a comprehensive overhaul of our training programs and reporting procedures. Lisa Wong opened a folder in front of her. We've prepared a preliminary action plan, Mr. Washington. We'd like your input on whether we're addressing the right issues and if our proposed solutions are likely to be effective. For the next hour, the group engaged in a substantive discussion about the bank's practices. Andre was impressed by their preparation and apparent sincerity. They weren't just paying lip service to diversity, they had identified specific problems and developed detailed plans to address them. Your accessibility audit is a good start, Andre commented, reviewing one of the documents. But you should consider bringing in consultants who specialize in serving customers with disabilities. There are nuances that might not be obvious to those without direct experience. Wong made notes as he spoke. Do you have specific consultants you'd recommend? Several, Andre replied. I can provide a list of reputable firms. As the meeting progressed, Andre found himself increasingly engaged in the process. The bank executives were asking thoughtful questions and taking his suggestions seriously. This wasn't damage control. It was a genuine effort to improve. Near the end of the meeting, Chen brought up the consulting proposal. Mr. Washington, we'd like to formalize an arrangement where you would serve as an advisor to our diversity and inclusion initiatives. Your perspective as both a civil rights attorney and someone who has personally experienced discrimination would be invaluable. Andre considered the offer carefully. What exactly would this role entail? We'd like you to review our training materials, participate in quarterly review meetings, and help us evaluate the effectiveness of our initiatives, Chen explained. The commitment would be approximately 10 hours per month, compensated at your standard consulting rate. I'd also want direct access to customer complaint data related to potential discrimination, Andre added. And regular updates on the implementation of the action plan. That can be arranged, Chen agreed without hesitation. Crawford, who had been relatively quiet during the meeting, spoke up. I want to emphasize that this isn't just about checking boxes for regulatory compliance. What happened at my branch revealed deeper issues that we need to address. Your guidance would help ensure we're making real changes, not just superficial ones. Andre appreciated the candor. I'll need to think about it. My practice keeps me busy, and I want to make sure I can give this the attention it deserves if I take it on. Of course, Chen said. Take the time you need. We'd be honored to have your involvement, but we understand if it doesn't fit with your other commitments. As the meeting concluded, Wang approached Andre privately. There's something else you should know, she said quietly. After reviewing customer complaints from the past year, we found a pattern of issues that should have been flagged earlier. Your incident wasn't isolated. It was just the one that finally got the right attention. Andre wasn't surprised. That's often how these situations work. Problems persist until someone with the right knowledge or influence forces people to pay attention. Wang nodded. Exactly. And that's why your involvement would be so valuable. You've already changed how one branch operates. Imagine what you could help us accomplish system-wide. The appeal to a sense of purpose was effective. Andre had built his career on creating positive change, and this opportunity offered a chance to impact an entire banking system from the inside. I'll let you know my decision by the end of the week, he promised. As Andre left the building, his phone buzzed with a text from Tina at the office. Client called. Judge ruled in our favor on the Thompson case. It was good news. Another victory for a client who had faced workplace discrimination. As Andre waited for his ride, he reflected on the parallel tracks of his work. Fighting individual battles in court while also trying to change the systems that allowed discrimination to flourish in the first place. 3 days later, after careful consideration and discussions with his partners at the law firm, Andre accepted the consulting role with First National Bank. His first official act was to help design a comprehensive training program for all customer-facing employees, with specific modules addressing race, disability, and implicit bias. Within a month, the program was being piloted at Crawford's branch, with plans to roll it out region-wide by the end of the quarter. Andre attended the first training session as an observer, watching as employees engaged with scenarios designed to help them recognize and address discriminatory behavior. During a break, Ray, the teller who had witnessed the original incident, approached him. Things are already different around here, he said. People are talking more openly about these issues. Crawford's really committed to making changes. That's good to hear, Andre replied. Have you noticed any resistance? Ray shrugged. Some, but mostly from people who've been here forever and don't like change. Most of the staff are on board. It was encouraging feedback. Change was never easy or universal, but the important thing was that it had begun. 2 months after the incident, First National Bank invited Andre to speak at their quarterly leadership meeting. Standing before a room of branch managers and executives, he shared his perspective on why addressing discrimination wasn't just about avoiding lawsuits. It was about creating environments where all customers felt valued and respected. What happened to me could have ended with a termination and an apology, he told the audience. Instead, it's becoming a catalyst for systemic change. That's the difference between reacting to problems and proactively creating solutions. The response was positive, with several managers approaching him afterward to discuss specific issues at their branches. Each conversation represented potential improvement in how the bank served its diverse customer base. On his way out, Andre ran into Crawford near the elevators. Your branch was ground zero for all this, Andre commented. How are things going there? Crawford smiled. Better than I expected, honestly. Customer satisfaction scores are up, and we've had 3 customers specifically mention the improved service. One was a woman who uses a walker. She said it was the first time she didn't feel like an inconvenience at a bank. That simple feedback was perhaps the most satisfying outcome of all. Beyond policy changes and training programs, Real people were having better experiences. The woman with the walker would never know that her positive experience was indirectly the result of Andre standing up against discrimination, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that the system was beginning to work better for everyone. As Andre wheeled himself out of the building, he felt a sense of accomplishment different from what he experienced when winning cases. Litigation was necessary and powerful, but this kind of collaborative change had the potential for broader, more lasting impact. His phone rang. It was his law partner calling about a new case. Life and work continued, with new challenges and opportunities ahead. The incident at the bank had become more than a personal affront or even a professional victory. It had become a reminder that sometimes the most effective response to discrimination wasn't just to fight against wrong, but to actively build something better in its place. 6 months after the incident at First National Bank, Andre sat in his office reviewing the quarterly report from the bank's Diversity and Inclusion Committee. The data showed measurable improvements. Customer complaints related to discrimination had decreased by 30%, employee satisfaction scores had risen, and the accessibility upgrades at 12 branches had been completed ahead of schedule. "Looks like your bank project is paying off," Tina remarked, bringing in his afternoon coffee. Andre nodded, setting the report aside. "It's progress. Not perfect, but meaningful. And to think it all started because some teller decided to give you a hard time," Tina said, shaking her head. "I bet she never imagined she'd end up changing bank policy across the whole state." "That's often how change happens," Andre replied. "Not through grand plans, but because someone stands up when something isn't right." The phone on his desk rang. Crawford from the bank. Andre had come to respect the branch manager over the past months. He'd proven himself genuinely committed to improvement, often going beyond the required changes to make his branch more welcoming to all customers. "Andre, good news," Crawford said when Andre answered. "Remember that customer service award I mentioned? We won it. The branch was recognized for most improved customer experience in the regional rankings. Congratulations," Andre said sincerely. "Your team earned it. We wouldn't have gotten here without what happened," Crawford admitted. "As difficult as that day was, it forced us to confront problems we'd been ignoring." After they hung up, Andre checked his calendar. He had a community workshop that evening at the local library, a free seminar on knowing your rights that his firm offered monthly. Tonight's topic was banking rights, a subject that had taken on new personal significance. Later that evening, as people filed into the library's meeting room, Andre was pleased to see a diverse crowd, young and old, different races and backgrounds, including several people with various disabilities. These workshops were among his favorite professional activities, empowering people with knowledge that could help them advocate for themselves. "Good evening, everyone," he began once the room had settled. "My name is Andre Washington, and I'm a civil rights attorney specializing in discrimination cases. Tonight, we're talking about your rights when dealing with financial institutions." As he guided the group through relevant laws and practical scenarios, Andre found himself sharing a carefully anonymized version of his own experience. 6 months ago, I went to deposit a check at my bank, a place where I'd been a customer for nearly 20 years. I was discriminated against by a teller who made assumptions based on my race and disability. The room grew quiet, people leaning forward in their chairs. What happened next is why I'm particularly passionate about tonight's topic. Andre continued. "Instead of just walking away or even filing a lawsuit, I used my knowledge of the law to address the situation directly. The result wasn't just justice in my individual case, but changes that improved the experience for thousands of customers." A young woman in the front row raised her hand. "But what if you don't know the law like you do? What if you're just a regular person who gets treated badly?" It was the perfect opening for the heart of his message. "That's exactly why we're here tonight," Andre replied. "Knowledge is power. You don't need a law degree to stand up for yourself effectively. You just need to understand your basic rights and how to assert them." For the next hour, he walked the group through specific scenarios and practical responses: how to document incidents, who to contact at a bank when problems arise, when and how to escalate concerns. The workshop was interactive, with attendees sharing their own experiences and questions. Near the end, an older man with a cane spoke up. "I had something similar happen at my credit union last year. I just took my business elsewhere. Never said anything to anyone in charge. Andre nodded understandingly. That's a completely valid response. Sometimes walking away is the right choice for your own well-being, but if you're comfortable doing so, speaking up can create change that helps others who come after you. As the workshop concluded, several people lingered to ask additional questions or share their stories. A woman in her 30s approached Andre last, waiting until the others had left. "I work at First National," she said quietly, "in the marketing department at headquarters. I just wanted to say that the changes over the past few months have been real. It's not just for show. The whole culture feels different." The unexpected feedback was gratifying. "I'm glad to hear that," Andre replied. "Change has to happen at all levels to be meaningful." She nodded. "I was in a meeting last week where an executive shut down an ad campaign because it wasn't inclusive enough. That never would have happened before. He specifically mentioned the consulting work you've been doing." After she left, Andre sat alone in the library meeting room for a moment, reflecting on the ripple effects of that day at the bank. What had begun as an unpleasant encounter had transformed into something with lasting impact, not just on policies and procedures, but on the organizational culture itself. The next morning, Andre received an email that brought his journey full circle. It was from Diane Chen at the bank's headquarters. "Andre, I wanted to share some news with you first. The board has approved our proposal for a community advisory committee focused on accessibility and inclusion. We'd like you to help us select the members, ensuring diverse representation of our customer base. Additionally, our training program is being adopted by 2 other regional banks who reached out after hearing about our results. Your influence is extending beyond our walls." It was exactly the kind of systemic change Andre had hoped to create, changes that would outlast his direct involvement and spread to other institutions. That afternoon, Andre had a consultation with a new client, a young man who had experienced discrimination at his workplace. As the man described his situation, Andre recognized the familiar mix of anger and helplessness in his voice. "I just don't know if it's worth fighting," the client said, looking down at his hands. "It's just me against this big company. What difference can one person really make?" Andre wheeled himself around the desk to sit closer to his client. "Let me tell you a story about a trip to the bank that ended up changing how an entire financial institution operates," he said. "One person speaking up at the right time in the right way can create changes that impact thousands." As he shared his experience, Andre could see the shift in the young man's expression, from defeat to tentative hope, and finally to determination. "So what do we do first?" the client asked when Andre finished. "First, we document everything," Andre replied, sliding a notebook across the desk. "Then we approach the company in a way that gives them the opportunity to address the problem. We're not just fighting against something, we're working toward better systems for everyone." Later that week, Andre received an invitation that brought an unexpected sense of closure. First National Bank was holding a community open house to showcase their newly renovated branch, the same one where he'd encountered Karen 6 months earlier. The renovations included enhanced accessibility features and a redesigned layout specifically created to make the space more welcoming for all customers. When Andre arrived at the event, Crawford greeted him warmly. "We were hoping you'd come. There's something I want to show you." He led Andre to a plaque mounted near the entrance. It read, "First National Bank is committed to providing equal, respectful, and accessible service to all community members. Our facilities and practices are continuously improved through community feedback and collaboration." It wasn't a dramatic declaration, but it represented a tangible commitment, one that customers could point to if standards weren't met. "We're installing these in all our branches," Crawford explained. A daily reminder of what we stand for. As Andre mingled with bank employees and community members at the event, he found himself reflecting on the journey of the past 6 months. The original incident had been painful and frustrating, the kind of experience he